Hi, I'm Shauna, this is Shauna's World. Welcome or welcome back to my channel where I make videos about living intentionally. If that sounds like something you might be interested in, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any ideas for more intentional living videos you'd like to see, please let me know in the comments down below. You can also follow me over on Instagram and my handle is @Shauna's World. So today's video is going to be on intentional living in New York. It's actually the second time I filmed this because clever old me shot it on a lovely autumnal day in Central Park, but I cut my head off and I didn't check the footage. So that was really annoying, so I'm refilming it. So I was out in New York in November. I'd actually gone to see my wonderful grandma who was living in New Jersey in a care home. She was 92 years old, and very sadly, since I was there and since I made the footage just last week, she passed away. So I'm absolutely devastated about that. So this video is in honour of her. But yeah, before I went to spend time with my grandma, I spent 3 days on my own in New York City, just having a really wonderful time doing some self-indulgent solo travel. In general, I'd always take a rural holiday over a city break, but New York I've been to so many times because of having family in New Jersey, but I could go back again and again, and having such a cosmopolitan city means there's always something to offer, no matter how you like to live and what your interests are. New York City still has so many things that fit in with my interests and values, despite not being a nature hotspot or anything. For my recent visit to New York, I found a mixture of low cost and budget and also free things to do, as well as a few splurges. In this video, I'm showing a few of the things I chose for an intentional visit to New York. Now, I've been to New York lots of times because of family, so I've done all the main attractions before, but these are some of the things I chose for a healthy, happy, and aligned visit to New York. The food scene in New York is absolutely incredible. You can get cuisine from absolutely anywhere in the world. I also particularly enjoyed looking for plant-based alternatives of traditionally omnivorous cuisines. With only a few days, it wasn't that easy to choose just a few places to eat during my time in New York, but one of the places I landed on and absolutely loved was Beyond Sushi, a plant-based sushi restaurant, which has a few branches around Manhattan, and they offer a fish alternative as well as just vegetable-based sushi and other Japanese food. Another place I tried, and please excuse me if I'm mispronouncing the name, but is Ha 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 Plantas, which is a vegan Mexican place, and they also have a few branches around the city. Mexican food in general just tends to be so much better in the States because of the proximity to Mexico and the diaspora in the community. And I was wondering if a plant-based alternative would be just as good, and it really lived up to the expectations. I had a tamale and ceviche made from heart of palm, and the quality was absolutely fantastic, and the atmosphere in the restaurant too was really wonderful. For breakfast, I kept my costs low for the most part by just grabbing a bagel most days. The bagel scene in New York City is practically a religion with such an incredible selection. Everything is customizable, so many different bagels, a huge range of fillings. Most of the bagel places have excellent dairy-free cream cheese alternatives as well. They do a tofu cream cheese, and not just a regular tofu cream cheese, but they'll do all different flavors, so you can get vegetable cream cheese and scallion cream cheese, which is my favorite. That's spring onions in the UK, a strawberry cream cheese, all made with tofu cream cheese as well as the regular kind. It's really, the culture of that is so wonderful, and a cheap way of eating. Now, as a teetotaler, it's very rare I would create a section about drinking in a vlog I was making about a place I'd visited, but New York, unlike anywhere I've been before, has a scene for alcohol-free bars. If you're all about the beers and wines and cocktails, this part might not be for you, but I'm sure there are plenty of posts out there for you. But for my fellow abstainers, New York has at least 2 alcohol-free bars. I went to one of them. It's called Hecate. It was in the East Village, and it was such a wonderful experience.
So we begin with oat of the oat varietal. We're going to use Seedlip Grove. Give it a little spice. Very nice there. Cold brew without coffee. It ain't an espresso martini without coffee, not cold brew without coffee. It's not blue without, you know, rain. So those guys, and then a touch of amaretti, Liar's amaretti. Fantastic. And then last, but definitely not least, ginger cinnamon syrup. And as we say on the East Coast, bada bing.
Thank you so much. I loved Hackett, and while they have a menu, the barman was happy to make an alcohol-free version of anything you wanted. I nearly cried having my first authentic alcohol-free espresso martini in 6 years since I gave up booze.
Outside of bars, my all-day, everyday beverage of choice is coffee, and New York does coffee very well. I didn't try as many coffee places I hoped, but a few favourites that I tried. So there was Urban Backyard, which was in Nolita, and they had this beautiful outdoor inspired decor. It's just a little place, really good coffee. And then another one I really liked was called Now or Never in Soho, and it had this iconic moss wall. Again, quality coffee, really good atmosphere. Would recommend both of those. Another favourite coffee find was the Brooklyn Roasting Co. in the Strand Bookshop, which is this massive bookshop. And who doesn't love a coffee shop in a bookshop? It's my favourite vibe. So I went there, really enjoyed it, but you should know you can only sit there for half an hour, so you can't sit there for hours reading, which is a shame for a cafe in a bookshop. But anyway, that brings me to my next point. Anyone who's been to the States will know that the shopping is pretty incredible, with so much more selection than you get in most other countries, and often lower prices as well. When I was younger, I would say my trips to the States often led to overconsumption because the shopping was so good. I would buy things like fast fashion, and even when I was buying secondhand, I'd buy more than I needed just because I got carried away and excited by what all the shops had to offer. I'm much more intentional about how I shop these days. So if you do want to go shopping in New York or in the States, I'd recommend thinking through in advance anything you need or would really add value to your life, and then seeking out those things rather than that kind of mindless shopping that it's really easy to fall into, but actually doesn't make us feel good and leads to so much waste and overconsumption. So I thought through what I wanted in advance to avoid buying things I didn't need and thinking about things that would really add value to my life. So I was going to head to a few thrift stores to buy some things that I needed for my wardrobe, or things that I really felt were lacking and would add value and add to what I wear. I also knew I wanted to check out some of the independent bookshops because they give me all the good vibes. And then I also knew I wanted to check out running fuel as well, things like gels and stuff for running, because you can get so many more flavours and brands you can't get easily in the UK. So I knew that that was on my list.
So my shopping haul from New York City included a book of queer monologues from the Drama Bookshop, which was such an incredible store, totally dedicated to theatre, books and bits. Some white dungarees that I hope to customise with some more colour, some wide-leg tan corduroy trousers, and an orange tie-dye hoodie, all from a Goodwill thrift store. I also got a good selection of running gels, including the Spring Energy ones made from real food, the Morton flavourless ones, and some interesting flavoured goo ones like a birthday cake gel.
It isn't exactly on everyone's bucket list when they're planning a trip to New York, but I really enjoy fitness tourism and finding nice gyms or classes in a new city. Running on holiday is also a favourite way to see a new location, but fancy gyms can really add to the cost of a holiday. So I fed two birds with one stone by staying in a hostel that had fitness facilities. So I stayed in the Westside YMCA. I paid about $110 a night on average for a private room. They're very simple private rooms, but included in that, you've contributed $10 a day to the kind of facilities, and you can use all the gym and the pool. So it's a simple gym, it's not glitzy or anything, but it meant I got my workouts in while I was on holiday. And of course, I also got to enjoy Central Park, which is right on its doorstep. So I had a 12-mile training run in my training plan. And honestly, running through Central Park in the autumn with all the fall colours, the yellows, the oranges, the leaves, it was so spectacular. I wasn't even feeling very well. I was really struggling with the run and had to cut it short a bit early. But I just finished it as a walk and enjoyed the beautiful park and the atmosphere. And it was my favourite time of year ever for having been to Central Park. I'm a theatre geek at heart, even if it isn't my main focus anymore. Broadway tickets are very expensive, and I did a lot of research on what was on Broadway, off-Broadway and off-Broadway. And after lots of digging into things, I often like the kind of more niche indie off-Broadway stuff. But after lots of research, I decided what I really wanted to see was Hamilton. And it's probably a bit of a cop-out because I've seen Hamilton in London. I know every word to the soundtrack. I absolutely adore that show. But I really wanted to see it while I was there in New York. And that is not a cheap musical to see. This was my biggest splurge of the whole trip. I got the cheapest tickets that were possible to buy for the show outside of getting lottery tickets. And I was on the very back row of the whole show up in the gods, and I paid $130 for that ticket. It was incredibly worth it. I had a great time, but yeah, not cheap. But also on the flip side, if you don't have big budget for things like musicals, there are much more low-key shows. And I also checked out a very local budget queer show in the LGBTQ community centre, which was for a suggested donation of $10. So there are entertainment options at every price point. When I'm in a new city, I love to check out the wellness offerings. And it was actually in New York City years ago that I attended my first ever Conscious Connected breathwork session, which led me on such a rabbit hole with exploring the breath and eventually deciding to train as a breathwork facilitator, which I happily do today. On this occasion, I went to a beautiful 2-hour sound healing and Reiki session in a studio called Maha Rose in Brooklyn, which is such a lovely environment, and they offer a whole variety of healing arts at that centre. There are so many options for wellness in New York City, and you can find lots of events on Eventbrite, but there are also a few other wellness studios I looked at. So there was one called Om Center in Manhattan, and another one in Brooklyn, which was a little bit on the pricier side but looked magical, called Gaia No Maya. And the healing circle I did was one of the highlights of my trip, so really recommend checking out some yoga or some of the wellness offerings while you're in New York City. There are so many wonderful options for walking in New York City, as well as the aforementioned Central Park. There's the High Line, which I think I've visited every time I've been in New York City since it was built. It's a disused railway line in Chelsea, and it feels like this nature paradise, but kind of surrounded by skyscrapers. So it's this really interesting balance of kind of you're in the city, but there's all this wildlife and biodiversity there. It's definitely less peaceful and more busy than it used to be when I first went, but it really is worth a visit. But aside for specifically going for a walk in a place like that, I think New York City is just a great city for walking everywhere. Often you think you need to take the subway somewhere, but it doesn't take that long to walk a few blocks. And that's how you really kind of feel the essence of the city, and you can people watch and you might stumble across interesting places. So I was always a real advocate for just walking around New York City and trying to avoid the subway unless it was for a much longer journey. Okay, so this one's seasonal, but with many of New York's skate rinks running from October to March, you might be in with the chance of one of the outdoor skate rinks being up when you visit. Bryant Park is the only free ice rink, and you just pay for skate hire if you need to do that. But if you bring your own skates, you can skate for free. And it also has the Christmas markets that are deemed the best in the world, though I think the Germans would have something to say about that. Well, there you have it. Those are my top things to do in New York for a bit of a healthy, intentional visit to the city. I had a really, really good time. And I spent those few days just so excited about seeing my grandma, and obviously it's really sad that she's not here anymore, but I'm just so glad I saw her, and that visit is always going to hold such a special place in my heart. If you're going to New York, I'd love to hear what you want to visit, or if you've been, I'd love to hear your highlights. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and for more videos on intentional living, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. It's great having you here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!